Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and Merry October. Absolutely. Hope everyone's good. Looks like the mic is on, and I have press go live, so we're all good so far. It has been a hell of a couple of days, hasn't it? And we're only on the 3rd of October, so we'll have a look at the charts. I actually kind of think days like today or sort of back end of this week doesn't necessarily need too much charting, but ultimately the sentiment is pretty good. We've got greens across the board. I appreciate we are seeing a few reds in terms of sort of single percentage drops, but the grand scheme of what we've actually seen over the last sort of 48 hours sort of pales into insignificance. And we just have a look at Bitcoin on the 3-day time frame, and that 17,256 resistance level finally broken with some ease. 12 hours to go till this candle closes, but we are looking very strong. We'll have a look on the weekly a little bit later, but we could be looking at the highest weekly close of Bitcoin if we can stay in and around these levels. So a good move, that strong move off the sort of 109,000. And really the big question is, are we going to go and try and retake the all-time high, or is there an opportunity that we need to actually pull back, catch our breaths in and around 117,000 before making that leg up? When we dive into the charts on a lower time frame, we can go and have a look at some of those. Bitcoin dominance is actually the way we want to see it, I suppose. Kind of stalling at the moment after it's bounced back up, but it hasn't rolled over yet. And I would just temper everyone with, we might actually see if Bitcoin does take that all-time high, just Bitcoin dominance actually climbing ever so slightly further before we start seeing that spilling out. Doesn't mean the altcoins aren't going to go up as well, but if the narrative is very much new all-time high, 125,000, there's some big figures there to talk about. We may see eyes really on Bitcoin there, and then that naturally just spilling over as we would expect. But when and if that rollover does happen, and certainly if we see a rollover that breaks the 57,000, I think we can actually say that we're in for an alt season, an actual alt season, as things start to move very rapidly then into the altcoins. We just need to wait for those levels, and it is annoying that there's a bit of patience, but the good thing about it is that we can still see our altcoin portfolios go up whilst we're waiting for that confirmation to happen. And I would just say, I wanted to say as positive as we can, I would kind of like it not to roll over just yet, because if it does roll over, we kind of know we're at the end and we're going to be seeing some fast moves before we then find that correction. And if we want to have a sustained move through into 2026, and my views on where I stand with 2025 seeing the top, but if those of us do want to see into 2026, we probably want to see Bitcoin try and hold on to as much of its share as it can for as long as it can through these final few months of the bull market. Total 2, again, climbing up at the moment. It's broken back through that 1.61 trillion level. Now we're just trying to reclaim the all-time high for the altcoin market at 1.74 trillion. I think Ethereum's going to have a lot to do with that. And Ethereum, still only about 4,500. It needs to take its recent all-time high of 4,900, which again isn't that much of an improvement on last cycle of 4,800. So we want to see Ethereum break that 5,000 barrier, start to build on it. And I think you're really going to see Total 2 move just because of the size of the of the Ethereum dominance as it stands at the moment. And then BitTensor. And, for the kicking that I have given BitTensor in price action for the last few weeks, it has bounced. And, for those of you who were there on Tuesday, I asked you for a little bit of leniency for this line, maybe moving it to the wicks. But we have seen it bounce off the bottom of this trend line, and it has bounced well. It's bounced strong. We were sub 300 only a matter of days ago. We're now 325. I will say, and I'll keep saying it, it's a good move. It's what we need to see BitTensor do, but BitTensor needs to put the work in, more so than most other altcoins. When we get EMAs, it's below a lot of the major ones. So we really need to see it retake that 360 level. Then we can start to actually talk about the end of this downtrend and actually see some reversals going on there. So I like what I see with BitTensor bouncing off the bottom there. Good to see. When you look back through history, recent history, it's probably a no-brainer that it was going to do that given the amount of times it's actually had strong bounces from here. But the big key now has to be breaking that 360, and then we've got a whole other line of levels to get through. But it's all through single steps, isn't it? So happy days with that. Let's put that back there and try and make it look semi-attractive. Okay, onto the 12-hour chart for Bitcoin with the liquidation heat zones. And we just burst straight through two levels over the past couple of days. So where were we? During our Avenger call, we were around about 114,000. So we put about 6,000 on since then, but we've actually moved aggressively through that 117,500 level we talked about in terms of previous resistance and support. And then we went straight for the jugular, 118,000 to 120,000 block. And we did not stop to catch our breath. We've gone straight through it. I was kind of expecting we're going to see some sort of pullback. And you've got to say, actually, this morning, fairly decent pullback back into sort of the sub 120 level with a strong buy back from it and a nice low test candle there with upwards momentum. We're hopefully looking to build on through into this. And what I would say is if we can get to the weekend when it's just crypto going with the hype of this moving up, I think we may see some big moves going on. Now, I don't have the chart. Let me see if I can just pull it together. I did just see before we came on. Let me get another portfolio up. People are talking about this CME gap. There is a CME gap. And people are talking about it now because we haven't hit it yet. And whether or not we could hit it. And it's down here. It's a CME gap of $300, okay? Now, you could argue that, no, Harry, we need to, have it from where we closed and where we opened. And it's actually all the way down there. But the CME gaps historically just need to reclose where the wicks are. So I'm not saying that we can't hit that, and I don't want to bring anyone a bit of a downer. Just there is a CME gap there of $300 in and around 111,000. Let's see what people talk about. The reason I mention it is, given this strong move, however we close on Friday, we may find ourselves forming another CME gap over the weekend, particularly if we move higher, which, because it's closer to where price action is, something that we may want to have a look at in terms of early next week, trying to close that. But let's just cross that bridge as and when, and I'll try not to get too sidetracked on these things. Where was I? Not on that one. Where was I, Harry? I've lost my chart. Here it is. Okay. I've not drawn any other boxes on here because I've gone onto the heat map. Now, this is on the 3-month time frame, just so you can kind of see the whole breadth of the previous all-time high. So I know it looks kind of pale, and it is pale through here. Based on 3 months worth of stacking, each of these candles are about 6 hours in duration. But you can kind of see, this aggressive move up we had from the bottom, week and a half ago, when the fear and greed was down at 28. God, we're in the 60s now, I believe. No one's really taken too many aggressive longs from this. We haven't really seen anything. We've seen a nice bright yellow patch build from the 109,000. But since then, I think people have probably been caught out by this move. I'm sure that this is going to fill up quite aggressively over the next few days. But right now, there's nothing really of major levels below price action. You can see how we busted through the 118 to 120,000. And then again, we've got a little bit here. I appreciate some of these figures are a couple of hundred millions. I get that, Bitcoin trades in the hundreds of billions every 24 hours. There's not much to the all-time high. So I think there's, in terms of market makers looking for liquidity to hunt, I don't think there's any real clear targets for them to go for. And then, with that in mind, and unless we start to see these order books fill up, I kind of feel like the all-time high is almost within touching distance. And that's probably where the price action is going to head towards. One of the other things we talked about on Tuesday was just this trend line. You can kind of see that, we broke through that fairly easily. This is that retest. Again, maybe we just sort of temper ourselves with a little bit of, if we don't quite get to the all-time high, even on simple support and resistance levels, maybe we then look to come back down and retest what was a pretty decent resistance level, that 117,500. Retest back down here, cool sentiment a little bit, give us the momentum to build back up there. And that's just if we don't just continue up to try and take that all-time high in its current path. So maybe there's that to look for. And I think, any movements to the downside, I'd be looking at targets in and around 117,200 to 500, something in and around there as a fairly safe level for us to at least have an attempt at a bounce from. And then I can't not talk about it. Bijan posted it in Discord, and so we've got to mention it. You know, who cares about October? Every year we talk about October, and then every year someone comes up with the muck rib. And hey, you know, they launch it in Q4, so it helps. And we have talked about this, but it's true. You know, every time the muck rib launches, price action doubles. Well, actually, it didn't happen in 2022 bear market. You kind of got to be there. 2020, you know, we went from 20,000 to 40,000. 2023, okay, 2021. I don't know if it came out then. I'm not a muck rib connoisseur, and those of us that live in the UK, it's just something we've had to forget out of our lives. It never comes back. Maybe it did come out in 2021, where we went from 40,000 to 70,000, almost doubled, not quite though. But then we get to 2023, and you know, we're talking about 35,000. We move all the way up to 70,000. We come back down to what, 60,000, 58,000, and then that moved back up to 110,000. And so the point is that, you know, there's almost a 2x written into the stars thanks to Ronald McDonald. And so, you know, where could that actually take us? Well, 110,000. Could we realistically be talking about in the next 3 months 2x into sort of a 220,000? Maybe a little bit higher, 240 if you want to do from today's price action. Now, these are figures that people have talked about for Bitcoin market tops for this cycle. So it's definitely within the realms of possibility. The point I suppose I'm trying to make is 220,000 feels like an awful lot, but we've seen Bitcoin double its price in the period that the muck rib is available, or in Q4. So don't think that we can't get there. Of course, the faster we get there, I think we're going to kind of confirm to ourselves that we are looking at a cycle top, and how that impacts, you know, sort of traditional markets and where they're going. Similar with gold making new all-time highs, we may just be getting into that fever pitched element there. So if we start climbing aggressively, great. But you've, as experienced traders that have been in the crypto space for a while, need to start in the back of your mind going, as good as this is, we're going to get burnt if we don't, you know, start thinking about pulling out at some stage. So definitely something there on the cards that we can have a look at. And long live the muck rib. I don't think I've ever eaten one. Sadly, I suppose I'll never get the chance anymore. But that is what it is. Let's get into some actual proper charting. As I say, don't really want to spend too much time today on this. But we've got Bitcoin, 1 day time frame with all of our little candles. Vector candles that we talked about, they've all completely gone. We have left a vector candle in our wake with with the daily time frame down at about 118,600. Could well be taken. I kind of think where the momentum lies for me, we're going for this red vector candle. Ignore this. This is just when we might get a new moon for those of you that are into it now. I think this is the target we're going to be going for. I think momentum is there for us to take it. Right? And when we look down on the lower time frames and you sort of see how we broke through some of this with vectors, I think there is a real sort of desire to have another go at this. So I think for me, that's the vector that's more than likely going to be taken, especially given that we've actually eaten into this and been rejected from it at this level. So just, you know, sub 120, we've kind of thought it back. I feel like the momentum is building now for us to be able to eat through that. And that's just where I see it going. Like I say, where I hope it goes, where I plan for it to go is two completely different things. And, you know, we've already said that 117,200 level is probably where we'd be looking at for any form of turnarounds. But just look at Bitcoin structure in terms of how it's done in price, how it's reacted within this range for the past 2 months, how it's positioned above the EMAs. Just burn that image into your mind for when I start talking about some of the altcoins that have a lot more work to do. You know that the standard has been set with where Bitcoin currently finds itself. On the 4 hour time frame, let's just close this. Yes, we are leaving vectors behind. And if we remain in this range, if we get rejected at the all-time high, it's a good chance a lot of these are going to get retaken. That's just the reality of where it's going to be. We can't deny the power of the range and the vector retracement. So we just know that. We put that one in our back pocket, and we just sort of move on into where we currently are. But again, you know, just remember what I talk about in terms of sort of getting through things. So we had a bottoming pattern. I'm sure on the hourly time frame there's a W formation with that wick there, but we had that. Okay, you could also argue that there's a wider W formation with this bid as well. And we talked about that one, the second being higher, which is much better to see. But on the 4 hour, from that bottom, vector candles. So we had price, the order book eating up with aggression, increased volume, breaking us through that 50 EMA, which is always what we want to see. And even on the 4 hour, which is quite a lengthy timescale to be using vectors, come back down, and we just use the 50 as a bit of a breather. And then again, vectors taking us back through the 200 EMA. Then we've been able to use this 10 EMA just to our sort of leisure of sort of building off it. And even this last candle, if we run out a bit of steam, we just sort of close back into it, 4 hour, and then we're moving up. So I'm good on the 4 hour time frame. We can kind of see a few other areas that we may want to consider. This 20 EMA, which is around about the base of 118,000, would correlate with the blue vector candle on the daily that I was talking about, which we may end up coming back towards, which is this one here, 118.6. Well, the wicks down here, 118.300. So there's some sort of correlation, I suppose, between where those are. But again, after a nice bounce off this, I don't really see the need for us to turn that around. If we start losing momentum in and around these levels and we start coming back down for a reattack, we could then arguably say that perhaps we are finding on the lower time frames an M formation of some sort and looking to move back down. But again, we have to be realistic. We have moved $11,000, so 10% in the space of a week, with relatively little pullbacks. We've got to expect some at some stage. I just think momentum may take us higher first, but then we just got to be realistic with ourselves to say we'll probably end up seeing some sort of form of a pullback there. It's going to happen. As long as we're aware of it, prepared for it, we're going to be okay. I should mention, in case Jared ends up watching this, the new moon cycle has not printed yet. We've got the waxing gibbous moon now, but we need to wait until the 6th, I believe, is when we're going to print that new moon. And, as we mentioned a couple of weeks ago, new moons hopefully continue with upwards momentum. But anyway, I'm going to stop rabbiting on about moons now, I think. Just keep it in the back of my head. So yeah, I'm not going to go down any other lower time frame. I don't want to waste anybody's time there. Generally, I think momentum is looking good for that. With Ethereum, so even with Ethereum, put it on the daily first. So I was telling you about, painting that picture. I'll give Ethereum its dues. Yes, we came down, we busted through the 50 EMA, but this week we have climbed back through it. We've got above over EMA. So again, in terms of an EMA battle, nothing really holding us back. No major volume taking us through there, just natural growth, probably piggybacking off Bitcoin's move up. So we don't have too many vectors behind us. We've just got this one down at sort of 3,800. But what I would say with that is it actually falls outside of this range that we've been in for the last 2 months. So the argument is, if we're staying in this range, we don't have any vectors to deal with. If, however, we're going to take this as the range, get rid of that, then any rejection of sort of the all-time high, we could well just come all the way back down here. We don't want that to happen for a couple of reasons. Obviously, we want alt season, but that needs to be powered by big altcoins such as Ethereum. But time-wise, we can't really afford the time for this to sort of work its way up and then meander its way back down. And before you know it, we're already in November. That's not necessarily what we want to see. So yeah, going down onto the 4 hour. I mean, just trying to have a look here. Kind of, there's a bit of, I suppose there is. Let me just move this one down. Let's get rid of this. The problem now is I've got so many bloody lines on my chart. It's hard for you to see it all. Okay. We'll start just with this bit. 4 hour time frame. Okay, we've come back up. A fairly strong channel coming up there. Fairly decent aggressive angle there. And we've hit this line. I've mentioned this, you could argue, why have you not drawn it that way? I've just done it this way as a bit of a resistance, just because there was so many other little wicks down here that it's kind of ended up hitting. We have hit this and we've come back down. Maybe we do end up, just falling sort of down to that 4,300 level, which is sort of coinciding with this chunk of price action down here. But at the same time, if you had moved this down here, you could just argue actually we've pulled back and we're kissing off it. So kind of difficult. It's such a narrow band, only talking about $30 or $40 there, you know, peanuts in the grand scheme of things, away to go, how you want to take it. I'm just going to stick with the fact that actually optimism still is there right now. Watch it crash as soon as I end this call. And the market wants to move back up. I think Ethereum has been sluggish compared to a lot of the others over the last sort of 24 hours. Let's have a look. Where is Ethereum? Oh no, Ethereum 24 is 2%. It's 12. Okay, I'll give it its dues. Where's Ethereum over the last 7 days this week? Okay, 15% up over the last week. So not too bad, actually. Just trying to see if there's any others that sort of stick out. Solana. Okay, right, fine. No problem there. Let's just turn some of these back on. We'll get rid of that. Again, there are some vectors down there, which if we end up taking, then maybe that's where we ultimately end up finding. But I am reasonably happy with how it's been working up these EMAs. The 50 is just about to get above the 200 as well. So we're going to have everything the right side of all of those. Move on to BitTensor. Okay, so this is the one, and there's a few altcoins like this, which good to see this move. Okay, absolutely. I want to reiterate that. But just look at, you know, what we were talking about before. Bitcoin, when it was in its range on the daily time frame, it was at the higher end of that range, at the tops of the channel, and it genuinely ranged. You know, it sort of looked very much like this. Okay, so we had those. Whereas BitTensor, to be fair, it's bounced off its bottom. Great. It's below its EMA, 50 EMA particularly, and its 200. But also it's been making, you know, its ranging has been downwards. So we've got a little bit more work to do here, and that's fine. We all like a challenge. But for me, you know, the levels we need to get through kind of stack up. You know, whether you want to just start stacking them here. I mean, actually that 360 ties in with the 200, but even then you sort of got here and then here before you know it, you know, we're all the way back up to 460, but they are genuine levels that we need to break for one reason or another. The first one, 335, 50 EMA. Let's break that one with a vector candle. It'd be nice to see. The 360 is to sort of at least provide us with some hope that we're actually reversing the trend and we're clearing out some of these previous lower highs. That'd be the first one we'd want to see. And then if we take that 391, we'd have two in a row. Perfect. We're starting to build from it. And then we can look to build up from there. So yes, of course, we've got to start making that journey. And it may well be a long journey for us to get there. But I'd mark these on your chart, really. 335, 360, 393 or 390, you know, however you want to round it up or down. And just sort of be like, right, can we start getting through this? And I don't care if it is a case of we break through this and then we sit here, break through this, we sit here, we break through this, we sit here. Fine, perfect, actually. But, you know, we've got to break through them. And the reality of it is the 50, okay, we kind of do break through it. Maybe we struggle to get through the cloud. But it's really the lower highs, the 360, the 390, the 450. They're the ones I think we need to prove that we can do that on. But as I stand, you know, happy to see the progress it has made thus far. And we're eating into this vector candle, which we know vector candles don't stay. There is a vector candle at 390, you know. So like I say, if we can get through 350 and 360, there's almost a magnet for us to try and take that. We haven't been there since mid-August, but doesn't mean we can't get there. Going down onto the 4 hour, and again, you know, some encouragement. So a sort of a rounding bottom there, which, no, I don't think there's a second. But just look, you know, again, what were we looking for? So we came up, attempted it, rejected, came back down. Needed that vector candle, but we did break it with a vector candle. Started climbing, came back down, retested off it, built support, and now we're just getting squeezed by that 200 EMA. Fine, no problem. We just need to find another vector candle and movement up, and just look at the magnets we've got there. We do actually have vectors all the way through to 346 to try and drag that price up, and then we battle with the 800 EMA and look to get above that. And after that, you know, we are talking sort of 390 before we see a vector. But I think there is definite, you know, a path through this. But really, you can see why we've sort of been stalling a little bit in and around this 200 EMA, fine. But the next path is we need to find volume. We need to find volume increase through to take that there. I don't know if there's worth drawing a fib down here. Maybe it gives okay. So the fib as well kind of just shows at the 0.5 there why we're potentially getting rejected through. Maybe we come down to that 320 to build through. And again, the top of these vectors is at the 618 to 340 level. So maybe there's some other things just to sort of bear in mind. There's a lot of levels that now you may need to consider. If you can't be bothered looking at all of those, I'd just stick with the lower high levels we talked about, sort of 360, 390, 450. But okay. Solana, what have we got here? What did I do there? Okay, I'm not sure. Anyway, that's a fib level, and it's come back down, it's moved up. So Solana had obviously a good move through July and August. We had a bit of a pullback through September, a bit of worry there, but again, a bit like Bitcoin, causing some vector candles, which we have just recovered, and a good strong, I mean, this is a V-shaped reversal as you're going to get, and I stand by what I said on Tuesday night. Solana has, for me, a better use case than Ethereum really does. It's performed better than Ethereum has this cycle. And whilst it doesn't have the market cap of XRP, of BNB, and of Ethereum, I think it is a real indicator of where we are within the alt season, in my opinion. And we're really starting to move up there. Yes, we've had a bit of a pullback today, which will go down the lower time frame to see what's potentially causing that. But again, only natural. The rest of the market is doing the same after a strong climb for the last few days. And this isn't an all-time high, but the sort of local high of 255, I think it's fairly within its reach. I have to be realistic there and say that's probably looking fairly good. Dropping onto the 4-hour time frame, and even this move up, we haven't left too many vectors behind. We've got a fairly clear one here from 210 to 218, and we do have some EMAs protecting that. I'd argue, again, similar to Bitcoin, if we can't get above the range, so say we get to the top of 250, if we can't break through that, it's likely that move is going to take us ultimately back down there. But on this move up, the 10 EMA has worked with us very nicely. And that's where we find ourselves sort of correcting to. And we're just in that process of just seeing if we can build up through and beyond that one. So again, I think it's looking relatively positive there. And it's just one to ultimately have to monitor. And not really too much else to say on it. And I stand by that open statement of, when the markets have all moved up like this, let's not try and get in its way. Obviously, let's not try and get too caught up in it. We are only 3 days into October. There's plenty of time left for us to have a big month, but that also means there's plenty of time for us to have a little correction before we get that big move up. Casper, we're not really charted for a while, daily time frame, but again, a bit like BitTensor in terms of work to do, breaking the trend lines, getting through the EMAs, breaking the lower highs that have been forming. SPX are pretty much probably the only one that's really bothered about that, except for me and the memes. We've had that correction down there. We have now got above the 50 EMA on the daily with vectors. There are some vectors left there, and we're not that far away from them yet, although there is this long-term trend line that at least we've got back above. Let's just break 150, then we can really start to celebrate. And SPX has moved aggressively. I mean, it's up 40% in the last 7 days. So, it could easily build on that one. And I think that's partly because Solana's been doing so well. So, XRP, for those that are in it, I mean, it is in its own little ranging pattern. Again, a little bit like BitTensor in terms of it's on a shorter time frame, but we are making lower highs. We're very close to being able to take this on 312. We need to close above that. We can kind of say we've beaten that there, and then a couple of vectors that we can ultimately go to have a look at. As the people were talking about last week, it had a great little correction after a lot of hype. And if it's continuing its move back up, then fair play to it. It's so new that we've got to drop it down to lower time frames. Might even have to put it down to the hourly, to be honest. Okay, now I'm starting to get a bit of data. But yeah, still very hype driven, still one of the most talked about. So just be careful with it. That being said, it has had a decent pullback, flushing out those, kind of just building up on some sort of trend line right now. If you are going to get into it, just be mindful of any break of that. It is on the hourly time frame though. BNB just continuing to make new all-time highs. Again, pull back to 20 EMA. Oh, I'm on the 1 hour daily. Let's go. So pull back to the 20 after making its first all-time high. Climbed up, and now it's free to continue. And it's not even done it with any volume. It's not left any vectors behind there. There's some strength behind on that one. Rest of the markets, Nasdaq, new all-time high. S&P, new all-time high. Apple, I don't know if this is all-time high. It's probably not. Beginning of the year, maybe. Coinbase finally closed that gap that we talked about for a while from its poor earnings. So strong move yesterday, Coinbase. Strong move yesterday for Circle. Leaving vectors in the wake. Maybe they're coming back, especially Circle. It was up 16% yesterday. But nicely bouncing off that trend line and through that 50 EMA. So like to see it sort of stick the landing above, say, 140 today. Google, Meta, Microsoft. MicroStrategy building its way back up after posting some lows of 294. Nvidia all-time highs, Plant all-time highs, Tesla. Oh, bit of a correction today. Don't know if what's caused that yesterday. I know Elon's having some beef with Netflix. Maybe that's it. We've talked Bitcoin dominance. I'm not going to go on that any further. And the BTC ETH chart. So I normally have it on that actually. So I know, again, let's just get rid of all of these. Last couple of charts, guys, and I'll let you get off for your weekend. So I'll put it on the weekly because otherwise it's just hard to see. That's sort of the trend line. We're just re-attacking it at the moment. And I think this is going to be very evident in terms of how Bitcoin dominance plays. So, you know, wanting to see us get to the northern side of that one. The whole season, it just slides across and moves sideways. I think that's probably the best thing for the longevity of the remainder of this market. But if we start to see a big sharp breakthrough, fine, we can enjoy it. We just got to be cautious of how long that's going to last for. And I think that's probably it. Half an hour, it's not too bad. We have had a good week. Just remember, as I say, you know, it is October. We're actually only 5%. We've actually only made the same gains in the last 4 days what we made in all of last month. But of the green months that we've had for October, we're still, it's 27 days to go. But as it stands at the moment, this is way below where we usually see ourselves. It's normally a double-digit percentage increase on the month, which would be great to see. We'd certainly be seeing Bitcoin taking that all-time high if it can achieve that. So still plenty to go for there. I'm going to leave it at that because I'm hungry and I want to get some lunch. But enjoy the rest of your week, everybody. Enjoy the weekend. I'll be around on Discord. We'll be just seeing how this is going. I do have a Bitcoin and a Solana trade open. There's no point really talking about them because there's no entries because I did it a few days ago. But I will let you know how those go and if there's any opportunities for any re-entries if I decide to take some profit on them. The idea is to try and leave them open. They're only really low leverage, like sort of like 5x. Just to try and give myself sort of maybe a longer term trade on those. But anyway, that's, if there's any others, I'll try. Oh, the Muck Rib, I did actually. I should have posted. I've just jokingly put $30 into the Muck Rib meme coin just to see if it works for this cycle. Right, enjoy your weekend, everybody, and I'll speak to you all soon. Cheers now.